Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number Analysis. When I woke up in our hotel room, it was almost midnight. I didn't see my husband nor daughter. I called them, but I heard their phones ringing in the room. Feeling worried, I went outside and walked down the street, but they were nowhere to be found. When I decided I should ask someone for help, a crowd nearby caught my attention. I approached, hoping to find my husband and daughter, and suddenly I saw two familiar faces. I smiled, feeling calm. Just then, my daughter saw me and called, "Mom." They were watching the magic show. Finally, I felt all my worries disappear. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 01. Greg and I had been rock climbing since sunrise and had had no problems. Greg. So we took a risk. Look, the first bolt is right there. I can definitely climb out to it. Piece of cake, I persuaded Greg, minutes before I found myself pinned. Greg. It wasn't a piece of cake. The rock was deceptively barren of handholds. I clumsily moved back and forth across the cliff face and ended up with nowhere to go, but down. The bolt that would save my life, if I could get to it, was about 2 feet above my reach. 2. My arms trembled from exhaustion. I looked at Greg. Greg. My body froze with fright from my neck down to my toes. Our rope was tied between us. If I fell, he would fall with me. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 02. On a 2-week trip in the Rocky Mountains, I saw a grizzly bear in its native habitat. 2. At first, I felt joy as I watched the bear walk across the land. He stopped every once in a while to turn his head about, sniffing deeply. He was following the scent of something, and slowly I began to realize that this giant animal was smelling me. I froze. This was no longer a wonderful experience, it was now an issue of survival. The bear's motivation was to find meat to eat, and I was clearly on his menu. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 03. On one beautiful spring day, I was fully enjoying my day off. I arrived at the nail salon, and muted my cell phone so that I would be disconnected for the hour and feel calm and peaceful. I was so comfortable while I got a manicure. As I left the place, I checked my cell phone and saw 4 missed calls from a strange number. I knew immediately that something bad was coming, and I called back. A young woman answered and said that my father had fallen over a stone and was injured, now seated on a bench. I was really concerned since he had just recovered from his knee surgery. I rushed getting into my car to go see him. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 04. It was 2 hours before the submission deadline and I still hadn't finished my news article. I sat at the desk, but suddenly, the typewriter didn't work. No matter how hard I tapped the keys, the levers wouldn't move to strike the paper. I started to realize that I would not be able to finish the article on time. Desperately, I rested the typewriter on my lap and started hitting each key with as much force as I could manage. Nothing happened. Thinking something might have happened inside of it, I opened the cover, lifted up the keys, and found the problem: a paper clip. The keys had no room to move. After picking it out, I pressed and pulled some parts. The keys moved smoothly again. I breathed deeply and smiled. Now I knew that I could finish my article on time. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 05. One Saturday morning, Matthew's mother told Matthew that she was going to take him to the park. Matthew, A big smile came across his face. As he loved to play outside, he ate his breakfast and got dressed quickly so they could go. When they got to the park, Matthew ran all the way over to the swing set. Matthew. That was his favorite thing to do at the park. But the swings were all being used. His mother explained that he could use the slide until a swing became available, but it was broken. Suddenly, his mother got a phone call and she told Matthew they had to leave. Matthew. His heart sank. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 06. The principal stepped on stage. Now, I present this year's top academic award to the student who has achieved the highest placing. He smiled at the row of seats where 12 finalists had gathered. Zoe wiped a sweaty hand on her handkerchief and glanced at the other finalists. So. They all looked as pale and uneasy as herself. Zoe and one of the other finalists had won first placing in 4 subjects, so it came down to how teachers ranked their hard work and confidence. Zoe won. The trophy for general excellence is awarded to Miss Zoe Perry, the principal declared. Zoe Perry. Could Zoe step this way, please? Zoe felt as if she were in heaven. She walked into the thunder of applause with a big smile. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 07. When my mom came home from the mall with a special present for me, I was pretty sure I knew what it was. I was absolutely thrilled because I would soon communicate with a new cell phone. I was daydreaming about all of the cool apps and games I was going to download. But my mom smiled really big and handed me a book. I flipped through the pages, figuring that maybe she had hidden my new phone inside. But I slowly realized that my mom had not got me a phone and my present was just a little book, which was so different from what I had wanted. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 08. In the middle of the night, Matt suddenly awakened. Matt. He glanced at his clock. It was 3:23. 3:23. For just an instant he wondered what had wakened him. Then he remembered. He had heard someone come into his room. Matt sat up in bed, rubbed his eyes, and looked around the small room. Matt. Mom. He said quietly, hoping he would hear his mother's voice assuring him that everything was all right. But there was no answer. Matt tried to tell himself that he was just hearing things. Matt. But he knew he wasn't. There was someone in his room. He could hear rhythmic, scratchy breathing and it wasn't his own. He lay awake for the rest of the night. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 09. One day, Cindy happened to sit next to a famous artist in a cafe, and she was thrilled to see him in person. Cindy. He was drawing on a used napkin over coffee. She was looking on in awe. After a few moments, the man finished his coffee and was about to throw away the napkin as he left. Cindy stopped him. Cindy. Can I have that napkin you drew on? She asked. Sure, he replied. $20,000. 2. She said, with her eyes wide open, what? It took you like 2 minutes to draw that. 2. No, he said. It took me over 60 years to draw this. 60. Being at a loss, she stood still rooted to the ground. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 10. On the way home, Shirley noticed a truck parked in front of the house across the street. Shirley. New neighbors. Shirley was dying to know about them. Shirley. Do you know anything about the new neighbors? She asked Pa at dinner. He said, yes, and there's one thing that may be interesting to you. Shirley had a billion more questions. Shirley. Pa said joyfully, they have a girl just your age. Maybe she wants to be your playmate. Shirley nearly dropped her fork on the floor. Shirley. How many times had she prayed for a friend? Finally, her prayers were answered. She and the new girl could go to school together, play together, and become best friends. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 11. On my 7th birthday, my mom surprised me with a puppy waiting on a leash. It had beautiful golden fur and an adorable tail. It was exactly what I had always dreamed of. I took the dog everywhere and slept with it every night. A few months later, the dog got out of the backyard and was lost. I sat on my bed and cried for hours while my mother watched me silently from the doorway of my room. I finally fell asleep, exhausted from my grief. My mother never said a word to me about my loss, but I knew she felt the same as I did. MTC. Good job. MTC. Let's start. 241, Chapter 2 Number 12. Salva had to raise money for a project to help Southern Sudan. Salva. It was the first time that Salva spoke in front of an audience. Salva. There were more than 100 people. Salva's knees were shaking as he walked to the microphone. Salva. Hello, he said. His hands trembling, he looked out at the audience. Everyone was looking at him. At that moment, he noticed that every face looked interested in what he had to say. People were smiling and seemed friendly. That made him feel a little better, so he spoke into the microphone again. Hello, he repeated. He smiled, feeling at ease, and went on. I am here to talk to you about a project for Southern Sudan. MTC. Good job.